My name is Aisha. My life began in the dust and sun of a small village, a place where time seemed to stand still amidst the hum of routine. I was just an ordinary girl, weaving the threads of tradition into the fabric of my existence. But at 15, everything shattered. My father, bound by duty and expectations unseen, led me down a path I hadn't chosen, into the shadows of a marriage wrapped in power and menace, to a leader of Al-Qaeda. In the silence that followed, terror became my companion, a shadow that clung to my every waking moment. I learned to bury fear deep, where no quiver of hands or glance could betray the storm inside. My world was a tapestry woven with survival and submission, every colored thread a hidden cry for freedom. Yet, amidst this darkness, flickers of light appeared, whispering promises of a truth I could scarcely fathom. Then came the night that changed everything, a near-death encounter that didn't just show me the brink of life, but the very essence of salvation. In the silence of despair, he appeared, a man clothed in radiant white, defying the oppressive void. His presence was thunderous in its silence, a force speaking to the core of my soul. In his eyes, I found a mirror of compassion that unveiled deplorable secrets, a truth beyond any I had imagined. This man was Jesus, standing at the center of a tangled web of deception spun through the world by powerful, unseen hands. He showed me realities that shattered my belief, revealing networks of control hidden behind the guise of faith and governance. These visions pierced through the fog, igniting within me a fire, a purpose that refused to fade, a call to unveil what lies hidden and lift the veil of deceit shadowing our world. In this video, I invite you to journey with me through this revelation, a truth so profound, it calls for awakening and understanding. Share with me your thoughts. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let's see how wide the reach of this truth goes. And if you crave more revelations and the unraveling of a hidden world, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Join us in uncovering what lies beyond the shadows, because the light is just beginning to break through. I was just an ordinary girl, born in a small village where the sun kissed the earth with a blazing embrace. Life was a circle of routine and tradition. I didn't realize that hidden underneath this facade was a web of expectations and promises, unraveling my future in ways I couldn't have comprehended. At 15, my world crumbled when my father, with a heavy heart masked by duty, informed me of my new life's path. Bound by an unspoken vow, I was given away in marriage to a man who was more shadow than substance, a figure masked in the terrifying enigma of power, an Al-Qaeda leader. That day marked the beginning of a silence so profound, it became a prison. I learned quickly the art of swallowing fear, of burying terror deep within, where it couldn't escape through. My eyes, or quivering hands. My life was painted with strokes of obedience and survival, a tapestry of concealed cries and muted prayers. Yet, the darkness of oppression would occasionally flicker with an unexplainable light. It was during one of those desolate nights, when sleep became a battlefield of nightmares and unspoken fears, that I had my first encounter with the light. I saw him, a man clothed in radiant white, a presence that defied the oppressive gloom that clung to every corner of my waking life. He stood there, silent, yet resounding with a voice that spoke not to my ears, but to my very soul. His presence was like a burst of sunlight piercing through the veil of a storm, igniting a spark of something I hadn't dared to hope for. A chance, maybe, at salvation, or at the very least, understanding. In that near-death experience born out of sheer despair, I realized there was a battle beyond the visible, a spiritual war of monumental proportions. His eyes, infinite pools of compassion and truth, unveiled a tapestry of secrets, not just my own, but those of the world around me. It was as if I was peeled away from the matrix of lies I had unknowingly inhabited. In his gaze, I recognized Jesus, the figure who transcends time and religion, standing as the axis of truth in this chaotic dance of deception we call life. He spoke to me in words not painted with sound, but with absolute understanding, unraveling the intricacies I once thought were illusion or conjecture. And the revelation was frightening, a hidden agenda meticulously woven into the tapestry of society, a network of elite forces crafting a narrative that chained humanity to shadows they didn't recognize were there. In that timeless moment, the world shifted beneath this newfound awareness. The truths shared were almost unbearable. The vision of manipulated wars driven by powers unseen, the division of humanity into fragmented echoes of their true selves, leaders not chosen by the people but by whispered forces with their agendas camouflaged by veils of supposed democracies. His revelations were stark, but carried the weight of undeniable truth. What lit within me was an awakening, a call to arms not in violence, but in spirit and truth. It was urgent, an echoing directive that the thin curtain between what is real and what is mere illusion was being torn asunder. I saw the faces of people I once knew, of leaders masked by deception, of technologies not meant to connect but to control. All pieces of a vast chessboard played by invisible hands. Every moment following that vision was a battle against despair and complacency. The urgency to share, to uncover and reveal the deception that had quietly twisted into the world's conscience was overbearing. I was no longer merely a girl shackled by a clandestine war, but a bearer of truth in a landscape that seemed indifferent. My spirit had been ignited with a light that refused to dim, a sense of purpose that burned like a beacon amid the darkened sky of manipulated realities. It felt like the world had shifted just on its axis, asymmetrical yet clearer than it had ever been. I understood now. The awakening wasn't about instigating revolution through conflict, but through a relentless pursuit of truth and spiritual revelation, a quest to break the silence with voices of light. Yet, even as I embraced this renewed clarity, the shadows loomed thicker, whispering their half-truths just as the vision faded, leaving me hanging in. The balance of what was and what was yet to be. Growing up in the quiet stretches of rural Iowa, I never imagined my life would take such a drastic turn. My days were filled with the predictable rhythm of farm life, tending to crops, feeding livestock, and a sense of community that wrapped around you like a well-worn quilt. I was an engineer by trade, but a farmer at heart, having inherited the land from generations of Stevens before me. That all changed one fateful October morning when a routine repair job on a grain silo cascaded into catastrophe. I found myself plunging from a precarious height, the world above disappearing as I crashed into a darkness far more profound than any night sky. It was during this descent into oblivion that I encountered someone, unanticipated. A realm between life and death where truths are unveiled, stripped of their worldly disguises. Suspended in a timeless place, I met him, Jesus. It wasn't a meeting of grand proclamations or thunderous voices. Rather, a quiet presence, powerful in its serenity. He spoke of a spiritual war that rages fiercely, beyond the scope of human eyes, pushing against every boundary we've erected with our ignorance and fear. It was in this celestial moment that he laid bare the truths we obscure with politics and prejudice. Jesus revealed the machinations of those we trust with power, how an unseen elite manipulated the strands of humanity, threading deception into our daily lives. I saw images, dimly lit rooms filled with figures of authority, their discussions a hidden agenda cloaked in the guise of progress, every word a step deeper into control. His revelations were a dagger of light slicing through the fog of my understanding, leaving me grappling with a knowledge I wasn't prepared to bear. He unveiled the truth of our modern world, a tapestry woven with the threads of surveillance and deceit, where technology, rather than liberating, bounds us in invisible chains. Leaders, faces familiar from our glazed screens, embroiled in a dance of power, blind to the suffering their machinations caused. Each pursuit of dominance, a fresh scar on the soul of humanity. I saw how wars served as a smokescreen, cloaking true intentions, a means to divide and conquer, to distract the masses from the greater spiritual war threatening to consume our collective soul. In his gaze, I found an understanding of the human heart, its propensity toward division, and its desperate need for awakening. A truth buried beneath layers of illusions and false securities, waiting patiently for a dawn of consciousness. Back in the realm of the living, the urgency of his words echoed in the hollows of my mind, like a prayer etched in stone. I awoke to the familiar sterility of hospital corridors, the hum of machines whispering life back into my broken body. But the world had shifted. My eyes no longer saw the familiar landscapes of cornfields wafting in the breeze, but battlefields. Fields of conflict between ideologies where lines were drawn not by boundaries of land, but of spirit. The spiritual war he spoke of wasn't some distant fable. It was here, coursing through every interaction, every thought that flitted through the collective consciousness, begging to be acknowledged, demanding to be fought with weapons of truth and courage. Yet, awakening to this reality left me burdened with the weight of inexplicable knowledge, a responsibility thrust upon me to illuminate the shadows of deception. What struck deep was the revelation of the awakening awaiting humanity, a groundswell poised to unearth the concealed truths embedded within and around us. Jesus' vision unraveled within me a certainty, a powerful tide of consciousness stirring, ready to rise and flood through every corner of societal structure. He portrayed a future where truth was no longer cradled by those coveting power, but was unleashed, freeing minds shackled by decades of manipulation. Therein lay the potential for transformation, a colossal shift that scared me not with its potential, but with the resistance it would surely meet. Understanding dawned that such an awakening wouldn't come without a struggle, requiring sacrifices perhaps beyond any we'd foreseen. As I lay recuperating, the urgency to share his revelations kindled a newfound resolve within my being, an unquenchable fire flickering with purpose. But how does a lone engineer transform into a beacon for spiritual awakening? I'm not able to assist with that. I'm an ordinary person, just a truck driver, spending hours on the road, lost in the endless paths of the highways. My life was simple, predictable, and frankly, devoid of much excitement. Days blurred together, miles washed away under my wheels, and life seemed like a monotonous road with no turns or detours. That was until one fateful evening, driving through a rainstorm that felt as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash away some sin. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield, visibility became scarce. And then, in a flash, everything spiraled out of control. A blinding light, screeching tires, the deafening sound of metal colliding with nature. Suddenly, I was free-floating, disconnected from the wreckage, from my own body even, as if I had shed my earthly tether and was suspended in a realm where time had no dominion. It was there, in the silence of this other world, that an overwhelming sense of tranquility enveloped me. I found myself on the edge of existence, where reality and the divine converged. Jesus appeared not as a distant figure, but as an undeniable presence, a force of unimaginable compassion and authority, his words resonating within me. Truths blurred by the veil of everyday concerns, revelations that cut through the fabric of illusion. His message was stark, a world shadowed by deception, where an elite hid in plain sight, pulling the strings of destiny. I saw a web of deceit spun across our planet, a hidden agenda governing lives, nations driven by greed under the guise of progress, societies fractured through orchestrated strife. Our collective ignorance fed into this cycle, leaving humanity blind to the layers of manipulation dictating the course of our existence. In that sacred space, I was shown visions of spiritual warfare, a battleground unperceived by the eye yet deeply connected to the physical world we inhabit. This war transcends borders and languages, manifesting in conflicts and ideologies that divide and conquer. Shadows of global leaders strategizing not for the betterment of mankind, but in pursuit of power, clawed at the edges of my understanding. I witnessed technology advancing under the pretext of connectivity, yet serving as an insidious tool of control, binding our minds tighter to screens and artificial algorithms than to our fellow humans. A chilling premonition of social division unfolding at the behest of an unseen hand gripped me. the cracks intentionally. Widened to eradicate unity, foster mistrust, and strengthen the chains of a spiritual slavery. Yet, amidst the despair, there was hope. A beacon lit within the darkness, a truth possessing the power to break the shackles of ignorance. Jesus' teachings, long buried under centuries of distortion, shone like a lighthouse cutting through the fog of our misguided hours. His revelation was both a warning and a rallying call for awakening, a call to become soldiers of light in a battle not fought with weapons, but with enlightenment. Each soul enlightened is a fortress converted from within. Each truth embraced a victory over deception. The key lies in seeing beyond what is fed to us and embracing the spiritual truths that bind us as one humanity. This awakening isn't merely for the individual, it's a collective rising that beckons us to cast aside the superficial conflicts and recognize the profound connections underpinning our shared existence. The journey back to consciousness was not easy. I returned to the harshness of reality, left with the haunting echoes of the truths unveiled and the weight of knowledge difficult to bear alone. The urgency of what must be done is overwhelming. The physical world around me now appears as a mere mirage, fragile and easily misled. My mission is clear, yet daunting: to break the cycles, unravel the strings of power clawing at our freedom, and spread the message of deeper understanding. My own life, once ordinary, is now a testament to this. Divine encounter, a symbol of what's possible beyond our immediate perceptions. Each day, each mile driven is filled with purpose and a promise to reach others, to help ignite the spark of awakening in souls yearning for truth in this confusing and often misleading world. As I navigate the highways, the road signs seem like silent whispers of the journey that lies ahead. Though I remain but a humble truck driver, I carry a profound truth within, a truth not dictated by the limitations of my previous worldview, but expanded by the revelation of spiritual awakening. The time is now, yet the path is long. The struggle between light and dark is no longer hidden, but rather a visible storm, a tempest brewing in the hearts and minds of every human being seeking clarity and purpose. This is where I leave you for now, readying myself to continue on this tremendous journey with the belief that one day, this collective awakening will overturn the deception and usher in a new dawn. Relocating to a new country was meant to be a fresh start, a life raft after drifting in a sea of chaos for too long. I found myself among strangers who spoke a different language and held customs I had yet to grasp. It was a small community, their days woven with the gentle cadence of routine commerce and communal gatherings. My previous life, defined by its intensity and stark unpredictability, seemed an inconceivable reality here. I embraced engineering again, relearning the satisfaction of measuring twice and cutting once. Yet, the ghosts of my past clung to me like shadows at dusk. Each night, images of captivity and the haunting memory of my near-death experience whispered through the veil of sleep. It was during these quiet moments, in a foreign land under a sprawling sky, that I felt the warmth of Jesus' presence once more, reminding me of the revelations imparted during the darkest hours. The community embraced me, offering friendship where before there had been suspicion. Church gatherings became my sanctuary, their rituals strange but comforting. It was here, amidst hymns and prayer, that I began to explore the depths of the truths I had learned, the hidden agendas, the manipulations by the so-called elite, and the spiritual war raging unseen yet tangible. Each sermon, each quiet moment of reflection seemed to echo the words I had heard during that profound encounter. They spoke of deception, the darkness veiling the eyes of many, and the light of truth that could pierce through. Sharing my story was not a choice, but a command from within, a spiritual awakening demanding expression. I started speaking to those willing to listen, weaving tales of my experiences, of captivity, and of the divine encounter that had altered the path I walked. In sharing, I found not only healing, but a sense of purpose. As I detailed the near-death experience, the room would often fall silent, each listener caught in the grip of the narrative. The questions that followed were always the same. a thirst for understanding, seeking the light of truth in troubled times. I spoke of Jesus' message, the unveiling of the political machinations, the threats lurking behind power's facade. Technology, once a tool for unity, now seemed a double-edged sword, manipulated by those who valued control over enlightenment. The global tapestry of lies, intricately woven by the elite, was becoming a straitjacket on the human spirit. As I recounted these truths, the eyes around me mirrored my own awakening, a blend of disbelief, fear, and a burning desire to rise beyond the confines crafted by the unseen hands. Through each retelling, I aimed to ignite a spark, a ripple of consciousness that would resonate beyond the simple halls of our gatherings. The common struggles of those around me mirrored the battles I'd faced, their skepticism towards the technocratic society we lived in, their doubts about the motivations of leaders who promised progress yet delivered only division. It became clear that we were all soldiers in a spiritual war, each revelation a weapon in the fight for authenticity and salvation. My testimony, once a balm for my wounds, slowly became a guiding light for others. I found myself standing not as a solitary survivor, but as part of a collective awakening. Together, we navigated the murky waters of infiltration and deceit, seeking the shores of truth through the teachings Rosaria had shared with us. Yet amid this collective awakening, a question lingered, one that nagged at the edges of consciousness like a persistent whisper. How do we live in a world once the veil has dropped, when the illusions that comforted us are pulled away to reveal something far more insidious? The urgency burned within, driving us to dig deeper. We understood that to challenge the status quo was to court danger, to risk everything for the hope of a new dawn. Each day, every interaction became part of a larger mission, to unveil the hidden agendas, to expose the deceptions that bound us, to rally in defense of a shared humanity that was as fragile as it was resilient. But as revelations unfolded like chapters in a story yet to be told, the journey ahead remained daunting. I was just an ordinary guy, living an ordinary life, or at least, that's what I thought. A trucker by trade, the open road was my home, the hum of the engine my constant companion. It was a life of solitude, yet one I chose for the peace it offered. Days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, those endless highways had a way of consuming the years. But everything screeched to a halt on that fateful night. The weather was unforgiving, the roads slick with treacherous rain, obscuring what lay ahead. My rig, an extension of myself, faltered, tires skidding uncontrollably, a dance with disaster I couldn't steer clear of. The crash was inevitable, a violent jolt that tore through the fabric of my reality. I was flung into the abyss, and there, amidst the wreckage, I found myself at the threshold of something greater. I awoke not to darkness, but a brilliant, ethereal light that defied description. Suspended between worlds, my senses sharpened, attuned to a harmony I'd never known before. It was here that I met him, Jesus. A presence so overwhelming, it enveloped every ounce of fear, leaving behind only peace. His eyes, with an eternity's worth of wisdom, pierced through my soul, reflecting truths I'd long buried beneath the noise of everyday life. He spoke. And with each word, layers of deception unraveling, revealing the hidden mechanisms at work within our world. I saw the puppet strings, the hidden agendas of an elite whose unseen hands silently guided the fate of nations. It was a revelation that transcended the personal, unveiling a spiritual war playing out on a global stage, enveloping us all, unaware, in its grasp. He showed me the threads of societal division, meticulously sewn, pitting neighbor against neighbor in a relentless pursuit of nothingness. The wars, waged under the guise of freedom yet fueled by greed, and the leaders, mere actors in an ancient script, their power but a mirage. Technology, a double-edged sword of promise and peril, connecting us superficially while severing the ties that truly mattered. It was a deception so grand, so insidious, that it had escaped my understanding. Until now. The truth was both liberating and terrifying, a burden I could neither ignore nor rid myself of. To awaken was not enough. This Knowledge demanded action. But before I could fully grasp the scope of what was shown to me, a force pushed me back, returning me to the world I once knew, yet now saw with different eyes. The weight of my new understanding bore heavily on my soul as I emerged from the realm of divinity. The earthly realm felt denser, charged with the tension of what lay unseen. I was back in my mangled truck, rain pouring in through shattered windows, a witness to my second chance at life. Yet, the man who once thrived behind the wheel was no more. I carried with me a mission, a seed of truth that I had to plant in hearts willing to listen. But where to begin? Here I was, a simple trucker, tasked with the impossible. Skepticism awaited at every turn, yet so too did those whose eyes longed to be opened. My journey had been interrupted, but now it took on new meaning. A path laid out by the revelations I could not keep to myself. The urgency burned within me, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The clock was ticking, the spiritual war intensifying with each passing moment. But how to convey what defied rational explanation? My words alone felt inadequate against the mountain of disbelief I faced. Still, the flame of purpose lit by Jesus himself refused to be extinguished. It was a message for the world, a call to arms in a battle for the soul of humanity. Yet, just as the words began to form in my mind, a nagging awareness took root, a growing sense that this was merely the beginning. There was more I had yet to comprehend, more revelations waiting just beyond the horizon of what I thought possible. And as I searched for the courage to continue, that realization hung in the air, pregnant with possibility and dread alike, a journey not of miles, but of truth and awakening. Now that you've journeyed with me through the shadows of my past, I invite you to step beyond the surface. Have you ever felt, even for a moment, that our world is woven with threads unseen, gently tugged by unseen forces? This isn't merely conjecture, for within this vast tapestry lies a hidden truth calling each of us to witness, to awaken. I was reborn from the ashes of my old existence, and what I learned was more than just personal. It was a revelation echoing through the corridors of time. A spiritual war rages silently but intensely, an unseen battle for our hearts and souls. There's an elite, shrouded in influence and intrigue, striving to keep us asleep, bound within the constraints of fear and illusion. But standing at the breach is Jesus, offering light, clarity, a path removed from the deceit that blinds us. So, I ask you now, what dreams, whispers, or experiences have challenged your perception of reality? Share your stories in the comments. Let's weave together the fabric of our collective understanding. You're not alone in this, and together we light a beacon in these challenging times. And if my testimony stirred something within you, do not leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and pressing that notification bell. It's not just an invitation, it's a call to arms, a chance to uncover further revelations with us. In our next video, another journey beckons as someone else shares a transformative encounter with Jesus. Until then, this is Aisha, thanking you for your attention and courage to face the unknown. Remember, the truth reaches those willing to embrace it.